Please turn off your cell phones. Different than being on Zoom, we have to have sort of new rules. And those of you that want to speak and have not been at a Plan Commission meeting, I will introduce the item, the staff will give us the staff report, then there are technical questions from the Plan Commission, and after that we go to public comment. And when that's finished, we come back to the Plan Commission for discussion and a vote. So call the roll, please.
Mr. Groth, Mr. Kiefer, Mr. Mitchell, Mr. Perry,
Here.
Mr. Coulibaly,
Here.
Ms. Davy,
Here.
Mr. Ford,
Here.
Mr. Hins,
Present.
Chairperson Prout.
Here. Plan Commission, you have the May 18th meetings. What's your pleasure?
Motion to approve the minutes?
Second. Discussion? Call the roll, please.
Mr. Groth, Mr. Kiefer, Mr. Mitchell, oh, okay,
Point of order.
sorry.
Can't we do a voice
Mr.
vote?
Perry,
You can do voice vote now that you're in person. He is correct.
Yes. Yes.
Sorry.
okay, Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Hins,
Aye.
Chairperson Prout.
Aye. Okay, the first item is public hearing on official mapping of Mockingbird Way from its western terminus westward to the eastern terminus of Windsong Terrace. Were there any site inspections? I don't see any. The chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. Go ahead, staff, with your summary.
All right. Jeff's running a little late from another meeting, so it looks like I'm filling in today. Hopefully he shows up and takes over for me. So what we're doing today is a public hearing request for official mapping of Mockingbird Way. As Planning Commission knows, every couple of years we bring some of these official mappings forward. Essentially, we're looking at logical or orderly development of the city and kind of mapping out roadways to make sure that where their logical connections are going to take place, we don't end up putting something in the middle of that roadway. So here we're looking at Mockingbird Way, where it extends out of the large subdivision to the east that Mr. Wiesenberg is developing. We know ultimately that that plan has it connecting all the way to the west out to Clairville Road. So at this time, what we're looking at doing is giving that official designation of official mapping, showing kind of here's roughly the area that street connection will take place. And it's really to help ensure that there's not additional development that would take place in that roadway as this subdivision moves west. So as you can see, outlined on the screen is that official mapping area where we want to designate for future roadway. Kind of here you can see on the right side is the original Casey's Meadow plat that showed the anticipation of that roadway going all the way out west to Clairville. Obviously, as the subdivision has developed over the years, it's changed a little bit as the different additions have come forward. And now we're just looking kind of to match those two up and have a roadway out to that area. And again, now the roadway won't be constructed or anything in the immediate future. It's just there to designate that area for future roadway. Here's kind of a little closer up of the drawing of how we would match up Wingsong Terrace with Mockingbird. And with that, planning staff is recommending approval of the official mapping of Mockingbird Way.
Are there any technical questions? Seeing none, I will open the public hearing. The city is the applicant, so is there anyone here in the audience that wants to speak to this official mapping? Anyone that wants to speak to the official mapping? Seeing none, the public hearing is closed. Commission, we need a motion.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report?
Second.
Discussion? Seeing none, call the roll.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly,
Aye.
Ms. Davy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Hins,
Aye.
Chairperson Prout.
Aye. Item 2 is architectural building plan review for a proposed pavilion building at Lakeshore Park. Were there any site inspections? I took a walk over there. Chair will accept staff report as part of the record. Staff, go ahead with the summary.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So item 2 is a building plan review for a public building, this Four Seasons Pavilion building proposed for Lakeshore Park. So you can see the subject site up there, the aerial. Oshkosh Corporation headquarters is towards the center there of the screen. And then our subject site, you can see that blue call out there. It's right at the junction, I should say, of Rainbow Memorial Park and Lakeshore Park, right at the north end of the Pinoqua Street right-of-way there. So just an image from the architect here, from the materials submitted. I should note that this did come before Plan Commission, I think at the May 4th Plan Commission meeting as a workshop, and Plan Commission was generally supportive of this project, so now they are requesting this formal review of it. So you can see here, the circle there showing our site here. This is their proposed site plan. So it would consist of a proposed Four Seasons Pavilion building and associated terrace slash outdoor plaza there, and then the associated surface parking to the southwest. I believe about 80-some stalls, 81 surface parking stalls there. This building and plaza would be the first of 2 phases for the site. One of the main things the architect wanted to do was to maximize and preserve existing views. So both of the water and of the park, looking past the building, but also from the building. So that is something that you can see this diagram that was included in your staff report, these showing the views that he wanted to preserve with this design. And the main focus of our review here is the proposed building elevations. The city does not have design standards called out in the zoning ordinance for institutional uses like this. You'll note from your staff report that Lakeshore Park is an institutionally zoned property. But for public buildings, we do have to review the proposed materials, design, and placement of the building. So the materials in question would be, or that would be proposed are standing seam roofing and also used for siding for some portions of the building. Cast in place concrete, which is also textured. If you'll remember from the workshop, you were able to see these a little bit better in the workshop, these elevations here. But there is texture added to the cast in place concrete to enhance the surface and to break up the facade planes. And there's also glass curtain wall there for the main gathering space to help clad that space. We as staff are supportive of the building as proposed. We recommend approval. We think the architect's done a great job of breaking up the facade planes and also tying this building into the surrounding park fabric, also preserving and maintaining the existing views. So with that, we do recommend approval of the design as proposed.
Are there technical questions? Seeing none. We had an excellent workshop on it. And I'll open it to public comment. And I see Ray and perhaps the design group is here too, whoever comes first.
Good afternoon. Lee is here from Smith Group, and we're here to answer any questions you might have. As we spoke to you at the workshop, this plan and proposal has gone through a number of reiterations with the Advisory Parks Board with public comment. We've also presented to the Sustainability Advisory Board prior to your workshop as well. So.
Do you have anything to say?
No, just thank you for taking the time to formally review
Then
the
I'll
project.
ask if this is the same plan that we saw at our workshop.
It is,
Same architectural.
correct.
I believe it's exactly the same.
Okay. Okay, great. Well, if you have nothing else right now, I'll open it up to further public comment. Anybody else in the audience wanting to speak on this architectural plan? Anybody else wanting to speak on the architectural plan? Okay, I guess not. Questions of the applicants? Mike?
Yeah, I'm just curious if the Sustainability Board had any comments?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, they had actually quite a few comments. Some of them focused on alternative energy sources for heating and cooling. And I think Smith Group and staff did a good job addressing that. I think a lot of the discussion also was on the use of native plantings versus mown grass around the site was another topic of discussion, not so much with the building, but just the site. We talked briefly about we're putting the infrastructure in for some electric vehicle charging stations in the parking lot as well. So some of those things that we know we need to start planning for.
Thank you.
Margie?
And are those now incorporated in this? I mean, it's my understanding we're looking at just the building today, but can you speak to the native plantings? Is that now part of the project? And the same thing with the charging stations?
So the native plantings have always been a part of the site plan of the project. Currently, we are planning to incorporate, I believe it's 5 EV charging stations in the parking lot. And that's been a discussion from early on in the design process.
Okay, so will the infrastructure actually be put under the parking lot, or do you just plan to have it available to run around the parking lot should the need arise?
The infrastructure will be in place as part of this phase 1 development.
Excellent, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Would you be able to estimate for me the amount of space between the ground and the bottom of the deck where the exposed pilings are?
It's just under 5 feet. So you can say from the bottom of the deck to grade, just say it's about 4 feet, if you take into account the thickness of the deck assembly.
So it'd be more than enough for small people, children, to get underneath there?
Correct, yeah.
And animals of various kinds.
Correct, without any kind of screening, yes.
Okay. Should there be problems in the future, is there an aesthetic way to deal with kind of screening off that area underneath the deck?
There's always a way to deal
Okay.
with that kind of stuff after the fact. We have not incorporated screening under the deck into the current design.
Yeah, and I understand why. It's probably not too pleasing. But Justin, you had a question.
I'm hoping you can talk just a little bit about the restrooms. I don't recall from our workshop, but I believe you had mentioned that there would be heated restrooms that would be available from the outside, potentially as well as from the inside. Specifically, accessibility features for bathrooms, and then I know from my own experience, like changing table type features if you are doing men's and women's, if there's that option for the male restrooms as well.
Do you want to start, Lee, and I can fill in as needed, or I could start out because through the Advisory Parks Board, we had discussions. There are 2 exterior restrooms, we'll call them, exterior for park use. Those restrooms will be gender neutral, similar to what we have at Mary Jewel Park. There are restrooms inside the assembly room separated from the gender neutral outdoor ones. Those will be male, female. I know for sure there was a changing station in the female one. I don't know where we ended up on the male side.
We have changing stations in all 4 of the restrooms, so both the interior access and the exterior access restrooms.
Awesome. Just the other one was then the handicap accessibility of any of the restrooms.
They've been designed to be ADA compliant, all 4 of them.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
I think I've asked for more public comment, so Commission, it's time for a motion.
I'll
Make a
move to
motion.
adopt the, oh, go ahead, Justin.
Make a motion to adopt the findings, recommendations as stated in the staff report.
Second.
Okay. Discussion, Commission?
Tom. While I still continue to be concerned about the available open space underneath the building, especially being a public facility that should be well used, my concerns are not enough to make it a hard no, but I want it to be known that that is a great concern to me.
Okay. Anybody else? Seeing no other? I think it looks like a splendid building. Thank you. And thank you for listening to the Sustainability Board and other feedback as well. We'll call for the roll.
Mr. Mitchell?
Yeah, aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly?
Aye.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Hins?
Aye.
Chairperson Prop?
Aye. Next, item 3 is the public hearing on a zone change from multifamily residential 12 district to multifamily residential 12 district with a planned development overlay at 2750 Minerva Street. Were there any site inspections? I did. The chair will accept the staff report as part of the record. Staff, go ahead.
Thank you. This is a rezone request for a multifamily property located at the end of Minerva Street. The site is currently zoned MR12. Surrounding area to the south is also zoned multifamily, and across the street to the west is single family and zoned single family. The site was developed with 2 existing multifamily buildings, both 8 units. So there's a total of 16 current units on the site. The applicant is proposing to rezone to have a planned development overlay to allow for expansion of the site, which would require a couple base standard modifications. And the future development would be addressed as part of the following item. The main item is they're going over the maximum density for the zoning district. Staff is supportive of the rezone as will allow some flexibility to the zoning ordinance for those code exceptions. And also the rezone to plan development is appropriate as there's those neighboring single-family uses, so to allow for further plan commission and common council review. And here's kind of an aerial view with the zoning. So again, it's proposed to be MR12 PD. So staff recommends approval of the rezone to change from multifamily residential 12 district to multifamily residential 12 district with a plan development overlay as requested.
Technical questions? Commission? Mike?
It just, for the city staff, if, the following item deals with this as well, and there are some mixed recommendations on that one that we'll get to. Is there anything harmful of us approving this if we were to not approve the next one?
No, ultimately, the reason we separated these, and as I'm sure you're used to, these usually come together. Because of the varied nature of the next item, we wanted to separate them. Ultimately, the development's going to need a plan of an overlay, no matter which way this board and ultimately council decides to go with the project. So we feel it's appropriate to separate them, get the plan development in place, and then through the plan development, we can figure out the details and the varied degree of which the plan development will be needed for density, setbacks, parkland, recreation space, all of that stuff.
Okay, and thank you, and I should correct myself. It wasn't mixed recommendations, it was options. Yeah, very different.
Any other technical questions? Seeing none, we'll open a public hearing on this zone change. Is there anyone that wishes to speak on the zone change? You come forward, please. Well, they can't hear you on TV if you're back there. I think you need to stand at the podium.
Chet Wiesenberg, 240 Algoma Boulevard. I was just giving Kathy the thumbs up. I'm okay with this. So,
Okay. Thank you. You can come back later for the next one. Any other public comment on the zone change? Okay, if not, we'll close the public hearing. And there are no other particular closing statements, so Commission, we need a motion. Motion, Commission, on a zone change.
Move to adopt the finding recommendation as proposed by the staff report.
Okay, thank you, Mamadou. Is there a second?
Second.
Tom? Any discussion on this zone change? Okay, if not, call the roll.
Mr. Mitchell?
Aye.
Mr. Perry?
Aye.
Mr. Coulibaly?
Aye.
Ms. Davy?
Aye.
Councilmember Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Hens?
Aye.
Chairperson Propp?
Aye. Okay, item 4, a public hearing on the general development plan for expansion of the multifamily development at 2750 Minerva Street. Any site inspections? Yes, same site. The chair will accept staff report as part of the record, and staff, go ahead with this summary.
Thank you. So this is the same item as the previous item. The applicant is proposing to expand the existing multifamily use with 2 additional multifamily buildings to the north for a total of 16 units. And again, with this current development has 16 units, so the new 16-unit development would result in 32 units for the site. Based on the square footage of the lot, the maximum number of units for the site is 29, so they're going to 32, which is over that maximum. So the applicant would need a BSM to allow that additional density. Staff did have a workshop with Plan Commission on this. Plan Commission did note concerns as far as leaving enough space for recreational area. So here's the originally submitted site plan. Again, it shows the 2 8-unit apartment buildings. The applicant has sent us a new site plan to kind of address that concern for recreational area. They're showing some recreational area on the north side of the site, as well as to the west, kind of in the front of the buildings. Another BSM they would need is for parking, as they're slightly under the minimum parking, which is 74. They're showing 70 stalls total for the site. So they would need a BSM for that reduced parking. One correction in the staff report, it notes that they're over as far as the maximum impervious of, I believe it's 60%. The applicant has noted that they're about 53%, so they are actually under that maximum impervious, so they would not need a BSM for that. The applicant has also provided a alternative site plan, which is, I believe, the site plan that they're mostly in favor of proposing at this point would be the 16-unit 1-building development, and that would allow for some additional recreational area as well. So that's the most recent site plan we received. Here is kind of building elevations for, you can see on the left side of the screen, for the 2 8-units, and they'd be the same material, same appearance as the existing multifamily buildings on the site. And then here is the elevations for the 1-unit building. So again, kind of matching the appearance of the existing buildings on the site. And this is the general development plan. So at this point, we were not recommending any base standard modifications. That would be addressed as part of the specific implementation plan stage of the request. So staff is actually recommending that Plan Commission recommend the appropriate scale of development for the proposed GDP with one of the following options, and that'd be denial of the proposed 2 8-unit buildings, approval of the proposed 2 8-unit buildings, approval of 1 16-unit building, or approval of 1 12-unit building.
Okay, thank you.
A couple of additional comments. It's not in the PowerPoint. We had received it after this was started and put together. The developer also has another 16-unit design that's an option as well that I know Chet's going to talk about, that shrinks up the 16-unit building, putting in some smaller, more efficiency, economical, affordable units, and then gives them even more potential for recreational space on the north side. So if you can go back to the 16-unit building for me, or 16-unit site plan for me, Brian. So about 4 or 5 parking stalls in is where the kind of, we'll call it alternate 1A 16-unit building would cut off, giving them more green space. Still 16 units, still same parking calc, but does add some diversity options into the units as well. And I know Chet wants to talk about that a little bit today.
Okay. But you don't have a rendering up here that
I do. I
he
guess
will
it
bring
didn't make
some-
it into the PowerPoint. But there is another option. I know he's got maybe hopefully one hard copy. We can pass it around if we need to. But I do want to make sure that's noted in there.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
Kind of the other point I want to make, obviously a little bit different than how we typically make recommendations when it comes to general development plans. But based on the feedback of the workshop, ongoing discussions with the developer, we felt it was appropriate in this case because it is just a general development plan. We obviously have the SIP step after this to still have that broad discussion with Plan Commission I can also note that, based on the timeline of how the zone change takes place, if after discussion today, this would be tabled, for example, 2 weeks, and we meet again on the 15th, we could make a recommendation then, and ultimately the plan would still get to council at the same time. So at the end of today's discussion, you could hold it for 2 weeks if you need to. I'm not saying you need to by any means, but if you chose to, it would not affect the actual approval timeline because the zone change takes 2 readings at council.
Okay,
So
good.
final approval for the zone change and general development plan is looking at about the 22nd, regardless of what would happen today.
Okay, good. And so, when it gets to the Plan Commission discussion and motion, I will call for somebody to make a motion of one of these options. And then we'll vote it up or down, discuss and vote it up or down, and then we'll, if it works, it doesn't, we'll. vote
Correct.
another one.
The
Okay.
motion will need to choose a recommendation of what you want to see move forward.
Right.
Motion to adopt the findings and recommendation as stated in the staff report using number,
The numbers, or if ultimately you like like I said, 1A option, just expound on that motion and we'll make sure it's
Yeah, just so
reflected
that we know which
appropriately.
one it is, so.
Yep,
Okay.
makes sense?
Any other technical questions right now? John?
Mark, with 1A, as we're calling it, what's the difference in green space or impervious?
Let me see if I have that here. About 2% drops from 53 to 51%. So
51% would be the bigger building.
50, so, excuse
we
me,
have 51.
impervious surface is dropping, so the inverse.
Right,
You're
yeah.
getting 2 more percent
Making sure we're on
green
the same page with
space
that.
with the smaller building.
Okay, okay.
And kind of creates just a more logical area on the north side for the recreational space. Gives you a little more, continuous green space area for that improvement.
Thank you.
Any other technical questions? Mike?
Yeah, so we wouldn't need a BSM then when the time comes for the impervious? Would we still need it for the green space?
Depending upon ultimately where the SIP lands, we may or may not. We will ultimately probably need an SIP, or excuse me, a baseline modification for density as well.
Okay.
But based on the nature of this development, we can address those base standards during the SIP level.
Okay.
Once we know what this plan commission and council will ultimately want to see the project move forward as. We can figure out those exact details. Is it,
Okay.
is it they meet 90% of their recreation space? And they very well may not even need a base standard for recreational space based on some of their alternative layouts they're proposing.
So we still reserve the ability to make sure that they hit the code requirement for recreational space
Correct.
after this? Okay.
Correct.
Well, we
Even
can
if you
make that
propose
clear
this
in our
con-
motion.
Yeah, even if you propose this concept plan and you recommend option 2, at SIP level, anything that needs a baseline modification and is code deficient would have to be addressed.
And
Justin?
Hypothetically, let's say that Chet Development is going to do this project, and simultaneously Tom Carroll's development is doing one directly to the east. They adjoin. Do we require the same recreation space on both individual lots? Or do we have flexibility to look at conditions, situations that would, I don't know.
So the code requires it on any multifamily development with 3 buildings or more, and that would be per lot. Could you, typically because we are looking at quasi judicial, so we're looking at a single individual property owner and their rights and their development, we would typically say you should not aggregate those things together with separate developers unless they were coming in as a single request.
Right. Gets, I guess, to the second part of this. Has the city ever implemented for land use or housing, affordable housing or other in lieu fees where this development site doesn't, let's just say that Wiesenberg suggests that, this site is too tight and we want to address the city's issue of population density. We want to encourage density growth. And so rather than spend whatever 5% of the property value on a recreation area and playground, we'd like to pay a fee, and that goes somewhere else. And
So this will sound a bit like a roundabout answer, but I think we'll get there for you. There are two separate issues when it comes to land use zoning and subdivisions, when it comes to these type of things. Parkland, which the city has parkland dedication requirements that are only triggered during CSM or platting. So if you were doing a new subdivision, you think of like Ripple Avenue apartments on the south side, was a new CSM, created a new lot, they had parkland requirements. They had to do X amount of parkland or pay in fee in lieu of if the city determines in that location it is appropriate. For recreational space, which is something that was added new to the code, which is not parkland, it is added as a specific zoning standard, and those we cannot accept fee in lieu of. When they are ordinance requirements, they're basically development standards, similar to number of parking stalls, height of a building, those things. Those we can't accept fee in lieu of. Now, something that's going to be discussed with this board, council, and a number of other bodies next Thursday at the joint workshop, hopefully everyone is attending that, is that discussion about broader parkland fees or impact fees. Is it something the city wants to entertain and create an ordinance that adopts parkland fees that would potentially be any type of development may have a parkland fee associated with it. Right now, the city does not have any impact fees or parkland fees of that nature, but it is something that this board, along with several others in council, are going to be kind of starting the discussion on next week.
Sure. One last one. It looked like one of the models or multiples had front yard space considered as recreational space, and we can get a better description later on, but I'm curious how many other developments that you're aware of have what you would call recreation space plotted in the front yard.
Yep. So this is something that's relatively unique to this area. So staff did a little digging into the ordinance in the city in general, and recreational space can be between the front building setback line and the actual front of the building. There are not a lot of situations in the city where buildings exceed the required front yard setback to the degree of this development where you have actually something that can count towards that. Because our recreational space standards do have minimum dimensions. You can't have a 5 foot by 100 wide strip and call it recreational space. So it's a little unique in this situation where it does. Now, one of the things to know with recreational spaces, the ordinance does talk about preferred uses of recreational space, wanting you to add a swing set or picnic tables and things of that nature. In a front yard setback, those are accessory structures, and you can't put a swing set in your front yard. So we typically see them inside and rear yards. But again, we also typically don't have a 30-foot area between the building setback line and the actual building either. So it is a bit of a unique, and that's where, in staff's opinion, looking at this, I think there's a nice compromise that can be made here. They can probably achieve their total recreational space between multiple areas. So maybe one area has some of those improvements, swing set, grill, picnic tables, and you still have a large green space area that maybe accommodates some of those more passive recreational, lounging in the grass, throwing a frisbee type areas. So there's probably a balance that can be struck that meets both of those needs.
Can I just get a follow-up quick on that?
Sure.
So no reasonable person walks by a school and sees kids playing on a playground and is upset, right? That's great. And so is there a way to permit that type of thing in the front yard, the playground or the swing set or something like that with an approval?
Through the plan development, most definitely. It would need a plan development of baseline modification to allow accessory structure in the front yard.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other technical questions? Okay, I guess not. We'll open the public hearing, and the developer or the applicant may speak, please.
Chet, do you have a drawing of that smaller 16 unit I can pass around?
I do. Yep. Hey, everybody, Chet Wiesenberg, 240 Algoma Boulevard. So I think,
Now you gotta think I know how to do
yeah, first apologize for missing the workshop. Somehow we didn't get an invitation to that, so I think we probably could have worked out a lot of these things ahead of time, but I did have a chance to meet with Mark afterwards and go over the concerns. Essentially that we were asking for more density, 2 extra units, and at the same time, not providing the required recreational space. So we've come up with an alternate plan that still asks for 16 units. You know, there was some discussion about asking for a 12-unit. We just don't have a 12-unit plan that's efficient and makes sense to build. But we do have a 16-unit that we could condense down and include smaller one-bedroom units. And I think that directly helps with the two issues, the recreational area, that there'll be one-bedroom units instead of two-bedroom. And it also helps with the parking BSM, because we're gonna have less bedrooms, and in effect, less stalls will be required. I'll note that, excuse me, we do not have a parking problem here. Also want to bring up something is that this was developed back in 2006, and we did have an 18-unit approved on this site. So it was an 18-unit, so it was basically a 16-unit with 2 extra units kind of off on one end. And we had that approved, but we were slow to rent them, and we kind of held off on that particular piece, and then the economy went down, the economy took a bite, and we just didn't get around to it. And then while we were holding on that, the zoning of the property was changed from R3 to the current zoning, which, so R3 allowed us 1 unit for every 3,000 square feet. So we would have, in the previous zoning, when we first developed this, we would have been allowed 34 units. So, okay, so you'll see up here, what we're doing is we're essentially moving that northern building line. We're shortening the building approximately 24 feet, providing additional recreational lawn, as well as enhanced landscaping along the shared property line with a single family. Another thing to note is that when Roosh put the street in, Roosh developed it as R3 zoning, also developed the single-family lots. The single-family property owners across the street, when they purchased this, they expected 1 unit per 3,000 square feet. So it wasn't a surprise to them. I'll also bring up another point that the property adjacent to the east and the north is also zoned industrial. So for all of those reasons, and with this compromise of going down to the alternate 1, which is a 16 unit, but including interior 1-bedroom units, I'm requesting that you guys support this.
Would you tell me again, I wasn't hearing correctly, how many units of how many bedrooms, and was there something else about more affordability, or describe the 16 units in this new plan?
Okay, so what we had in the original 16-unit plan were 8 2-bedroom 1-baths and 8 2-bedroom 2-bath units. And we have replaced the 2-bedroom 2-bath units with 1-bedroom 1-bath.
So it's 8 and 8?
Right, correct. So 8 1-bedrooms, 8 2-bedrooms. And the logic there is that it's going to give us a smaller footprint in the building, more green space for the recreational area, and also will lower the parking requirement. I know it technically doesn't lower the, per the zoning code, but it does, because most 1-bedroom units don't take up 2 stalls.
Try me again, how many 1-bedroom units?
8.
8, thank you.
So we replaced 8 2-bedroom 2-bath with 1-bedroom 1-bath.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
John?
Yeah, Chad, if we could go pull that back up for this revised plan. The enhanced landscaping that you have up there, what exactly is the enhanced landscaping that you have?
I'm thinking just heavy landscaping with spruce trees and arborvitaes and.
So, yeah, nice to block it off from the neighbor then, which is something new that's not on
right.
anything else. And one one more question is, with that recreation area abutting the water retention, I mean, how, I know it's a thin strip there, how deep are we looking with the water there?
So we just hired Dayville Engineering to help us with our civil engineering, so that's not determined yet. But from just the pure size of that, that's going to be more or less a swale, directing the water to the back corner.
Yeah, that's basically my question, because of the scale of it,
Yep.
you really.
Yeah, we just really identified, I know from building the first floor to the south that all the water behind the garages all slopes to the north. So I know we're going to be picking up everything along that north property line.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions right now for Chet?
I do.
Justin?
At our workshop, I believe we've done a number of them, and I'm not always sure I remember, what was said about a particular one. I believe that they mentioned that every unit in the previous design was going to be handicap accessible. I think they said something to the degree of ADA compliant. I may be mistaking these with the,
So unfortunately, Chet was not able to make the workshop, so we didn't discuss, I think, accessibility all on this.
okay, that was
project.
the university area
Yeah.
one? Got it. Can you,
So
let's start this one over. So can you talk a little bit about accessibility of your units? It's a big point in city documents. Their study of housing indicated that it's a main impediment in our community for, I guess, equal access to housing. Individuals with disabilities, either they live in a brand-new house or they rent an apartment, and this isn't your traditional apartment complex, right? These are more townhome style, or what do you have? You have common halls. In any case, can you talk a little bit about accessibility for this?
Yep, so all the first floor units will be visitable, so they'll be accessible to the point that a handicapped person will be able to visit the unit. The front door will be 36 inches wide, and the unit entry doors are 36 inches wide as well. So then once inside the unit, what code requires one unit to be type A, which is a higher level of accessibility, and then the remaining units will be type B level of accessibility. So type B, essentially what type B is going to require is that there's clear floor space, 32 by 48 clear floor space in front of plumbing fixtures. And then the type A requires that sinks be have knee space underneath them, and that cabinets be able to be removable. Those are the main differences. So it's not quite ADA, but it's what the IBC, the International Building Code, requires for multifamily units.
You mentioned visitable, so they have the zero-step entry for some of the first floor.
All the first floor units have zero entry.
And then first floor, are they just single-story, or are they main living on the first floor, bedrooms on the second floor, and if they are there bathrooms?
No, they're not two-story units.
Got it.
So the first floor is all the bedrooms, everything's, just a one-story unit, and then there's a common common stair that takes you up to the second floor.
Got it. Any idea what rents might be, range?
Yeah, so right now, the buildings that were built in 2006, we're renting those the 2-bedroom, 1-bath are just over 700. But these new ones, I know we're gonna be bumping these up to 800 or 900.
Got it, that's great. So that really fits, I think, within an affordability range. Thank you. Last question then is, can you just give an idea what your vision is for these recreation areas? I'm not sure if I'm just envisioning a mowed lawn or if you're actually looking at playgrounds and.
So in the front yard, I'm imagining the mowed lawn. So I kind of think it already is a recreational area for somebody to play frisbee, play catch, kind of do that sort of thing, play a ball game. And then the area to the north, we're imagining swing set, sandbox, kind of something of that nature.
Got it, thanks.
Any other questions right now? I can call them back. Thank you, Chet. Anybody else wanting to speak on this general development plan? Anybody else wishing to speak on this general development plan? I don't see anybody. So we have nobody virtually anymore, do we, Mark?
We do not.
Okay. Then we'll end the public hearing. And we've just heard from the applicant, so commission,
Do we just make?
I would like a motion of one of these items or a variant thereof.
Yeah. I'll make a motion to adopt the findings and recommendations as stated in the staff report, option, is it 3A or is it 1A? The one we were just
The
looking
new
at.
16-unit option,
Yes.
is that correct?
The revised 16-unit option.
Correct, the
Alternate
revised
16 option.
16-unit.
Okay, is there a second to that? John seconded. Discussion on this alternate plan. I'll just sit there. John?
I just want to say, especially considering that the developer wasn't at the meeting, I think he paid attention to what was said by all of us. And I think all of us looked at that and we were like, yeah, that's kind of what we were looking at, you know, especially with the enhanced landscaping and everything, you know, that's definitely thinking ahead. It's going to keep that play area for the kids, you know, if balls aren't going to be going across yards and things like that. So I'm heartily supporting this.
Anybody else have? Oh, Justin.
I just got a question for Mark. The session that's coming up, looking at zoning and whatnot, are there developers or individuals who are improving land? Are there, is that population going to be represented?
So I believe next week's is just to lay out the issues for the boards and commissions. We're not recommending solutions, ordinance changes, anything of that nature. The point of next week's meeting is to start to go over the scope of the topics and the conflicts we have within various competing sessions of these codes. So next week's workshop is really just the start of this process where we're laying out to the boards and commissions the issues at hand that we need to work to resolve.
Got it, thanks.
Okay.
Right.
Mamadou.
Yeah, well, for the discussion, I didn't hear much push or argument or in favor, any way to favor the 2 times 8 units, but instead I saw a lot of advantages and especially the recreational area for the 16 unit. So I don't see much options between the two. I don't see much comparison between the two. So it appears to me that most things were towards pushing for the 8 unit. So is there any reason for us to go for the 2 times 8 unit at all?
I can answer for staff.
Go ahead.
I can't answer. From a staff perspective, there is a greater degree of recreational space available on the revised 16-unit building than there is the 2 8 units. The 8 units, you end up having to spread it out, get building code separation between those 2 buildings, which eats up into the size of that recreational space on the north. So by combining them into the 16-unit building, pushing as far south, adding the enhanced landscaping, I think it starts to give the best option available to achieving the code requirements.
Okay, so there's no real reason, there's no point of going for the 2 times 8.
No, I mean, the original reason that staff was behind the 2 8-unit buildings is scale of development as we move closer to single-family residential. Typically, in land use planning, we want to match the scale of development as close as we can as we go from multifamily to single-family. The 2 8-unit buildings obviously keeps that similar scale of what's out there today without creating a larger mass as you get adjacent to that single-family.
Just for the harmony.
Correct.
Yeah.
But then when you start to balance what are those impacts, obviously that 8-unit building is closer to that residence than the 16-unit option. So there is a balance there that we try to look at of, what's the impact on the neighbor as well as the other code provisions.
Margie.
I just want to say that when I had read this through, I was really thinking I was leaning towards the 12-unit building simply for the additional green space. But I would really like to commend you, Chet, for getting this, for coming up with this option for the 16-unit building, because as long as that green space is there, and especially with the landscaping you've put in between that and the individual home, I think this is really a good plan.
Yeah, I agree with Margie. I like the compromise. Thank you. Any other discussion? All right, we'll call the roll on this new 16-unit building plan.
Mr. Mitchell,
Aye.
Mr. Perry,
Aye.
Mr. Coolabali,
Aye.
Miss Davy,
Aye.
Councilmember Ford,
Aye.
Mr. Hins,
Aye.
Chairperson Prob.
Aye. Okay. Anything else in the main meeting?
One brief comment, because I don't want her to get out of here scot-free. It's been a while since we've been in person. Obviously, we have had a staffing change since then. So Mina left us back in January, and Hannah joined us shortly after. So Hannah's taken over that role. We'll be seeing her at meetings to take minutes and do a way better job running the meeting.
I was going to say, the minutes are going to be, vastly better.
Welcome, Hannah.
Thank
Welcome.
you.
Okay, if not, I'll call for a motion to adjourn, and then we'll go into workshops.
So move.
Second.
Call the roll, please. Are we still doing that?
No, we can
Nope,
call in
all
favor.
in favor.
All
We're
in
here.
favor of adjourning?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, that's nice.